In general, a good deal of this red tape is there for a good reason. It's to prevent mistakes. But you got to be willing to live with the mistakes and fix results afterwards. Now, you want to get especially angry when you're wasting money that's been given to the welfare of the poor. That's always understood. That's special money. The $80,000 per unit is just crazy. You want to get angry when the small businessman is put out of business, because he's kind of the yeoman of our society, the upper peasantry, the people who have a kind of a special reliance. You want to get angry when the important values are flouted because the people who are flouting them don't know what they're doing. Many of the sex education courses in the school system appear to the square middle-class family as straight pornography. The average American, for example, wants to have his kid taught about pregnancy, but not too much, about renal disease, but not too much. The upper middle-class part of education invariably goes to technique and orgasm. And it's crazy. They're trying to change the guy's values in a way which destroys his family system, actually. Incidentally, I don't believe that a social system which wants marriage based upon romance and love and wants the marriage to be for lifetime can in fact work smoothly if you treat sex as what people call the glass of water theory. The concept there is that you're thirsty, you have a glass of water. You're tense, you have sex, but it should be a gourmet experience. It just ain't going to work for a society based on romance and lifetime marriage. There are no world leaders today. There's nobody who you look at today for wisdom. Nobody. And I don't think it's a change in stance. I don't think it's an accident. I think when I look at the people who put together the American Constitution, the Constitutional Convention, there were dozens of people that had wisdom. If you ask how come, why, look at their background. At the ages of 12, 13, 14, they ran important enterprises. Alexander Hamilton, at the age of 16, was master of a ship from New York to the Caribbean and back. And it wasn't, by the way, because they were short-lived then. Many of them lived very long times, too. But they were just given serious responsibility when young. They also had read well. Every man in that Constitutional Convention either read carefully and knew, or knew secondhand but knew well, the Bible, Shakespeare, Milton's Paradise and Lost, Gibbon's Decline and Fall of Rome, even though it was published in 1776, just 13 years earlier. The most startling thing that probably illustrates the net, what's really going on, is the population story. Let's take the United States first. Back in 1980, the average American woman had 7 children. 1800. Right. It went down steady for 145 years until 1945 was 2.1, which would be stability of numbers eventually. Now, why did the spike happen? In other words, in all of world history, you have this single unique spike as far as we can tell. And we mean it. We think the future, too. Now, we don't know the future.
Spike right now.
Yeah, the spike right now is unique. We don't think you'll ever see a spike like that again in world history. It would have such a spike again would mean a return to 5, 6 children families. Very unlikely, you see. Now, why did it occur? We know a good deal about it. It basically occurred partly because of capitalism, but really it was innate in Western culture. You see, you're going, in many ways, the post-industrial society looks to us like a primitive society at a very high level where the computers take over for the slaves and the hard labor, in effect. So think of the normal slave-type society, if you will, but think of everybody being in the top 3% or the top 5. See, and that's our picture of the future to some degree. You see, the basic concept in the United States, to some degree, is, and this is not meant in any way insulting, but it's a little bit like the people claim the Navy was designed by geniuses to be run by idiots. Now, that's not a good description of the world of American business, to put it mildly, but it is a point that in many cases, rather average people turn out extremely good product. Over and over again, we find overseas that the American company competing in a strange environment with a strange group of people makes a lot more money, it turns out a lot more stuff, a lot more efficiently. Now, we're losing or have lost that edge in many places. And of course, the Japanese company does even better. And there's reason the South Korean company does even better. But that's the difference of culture there. And in fact, one of the most interesting things about organizations is that while the American style can, relatively speaking, be imitated by many, many countries, I say relatively speaking to some degree, the Japanese South Korean style probably cannot be imitated very successfully, or at least they can't go very deep into it. The corporations used to be run with a very small headquarters, generally the main plant, and the issue was, could you run the engineering shop? And very often the guy in charge was a tinkerer like Ford, who'd gone up, or Knudsen, gone up through the shop, and that was where the skills lay, and the successful corporations were very good at those skills, and the successful ones weren't so good. Today, more than half, two-thirds, three-quarters of the corporation will be white-collar. And white-collar is, by definition, information. You're not working with your hands, you're working with your mind in some sense. Now, it also includes file clerks and typists and people who burn paper and so on. But and the big success in the companies still depends to some degree on the engineering, the quality of the work, and so on, but even more on such skills as marketing, finance, management as an abstract science almost, government regulation, legal issues, negotiating skills, and so on. And this is new. There's an interesting side on this, by the way, which I was struck with very much. The United States Corporation, by the way, has developed two extraordinarily interesting organizational techniques which are generally not remarked on in the literature, but which solve some of the central problems of organization, or at least deal with it, don't solve it. The first is the problem of centralization versus decentralization. In decentralized operation, you got people with their hands on the pulse, they know what's going on in their area, but you have anarchy, you have conflicts, you're not moving in any one direction. In a centralized operation, you have uniformity of movement, but the top is very far away. It's rigid, it's distant, it doesn't know what's going on, it just totally lacks local sensitivity. Now, this is a terribly important conflict. The way the American corporations, many of them have solved it, is to some degree, they, particularly at the departmental level, the profit center level, they shift back and forth every 5, 6, 7, 8 years from centralized to decentralized, decentralized to centralized. It means that during the centralized phase, they're not centralized long enough to lose touch with reality, to get totally rigid. During the decentralized phase, not decentralized long enough to go anarchic. It's a dynamic solution to a very important problem. Another problem is the matrix solution, say you're selling products overseas, and you might want to have it organized by customers, because you want to treat the customers with special importance. We might want to have it organized by geographical area, because it's important to operate differently in France or Germany. We might want to have it organized by product, because the products are so different, as opposed to by customers, banks, insurance companies, so on. Many American companies are organized by all three ways simultaneously. Now, as long as there's a lot of goodwill and a lot of loyalty and a lot of team spirit, the overlapping responsibilities, the conflicting responsibilities get worked out. In effect, the guy who cares the most, screams the most, gets treated best. So the really big errors are avoided.